Welcome to the Leadership Bootcamp Podcast. This is Jeff Strauss. My guest today is the Honorable Tawana Nobles, Senator for the state of Washington. Senator Nobles holds numerous distinctions, including former president and CEO of the Tacoma Urban League, an organization dedicated to fostering the empowerment of African Americans and regional community members by ensuring economic independence, social justice, and civil rights protections. She is the co-founder of the Black Future Co-op Fund, which is dedicated to building Black generational wealth, health, and well-being. She is the executive director of the Tacoma Pierce County chapter of the American Leadership Forum, dedicated to joining and strengthening diverse, influential leaders to better serve the public good. And of course, a senator representing Washingtonians since 2021, when she became the first Black legislator elected to office in over a decade. Senator Nobles and I discussed the importance of ethics at work, how to draw professional boundaries, humility and responsibility in leadership, staying grounded when imbued with power, differences between leadership in politics and private enterprise, why the idea of service is important and how it's lost in the current environment of civil service, how to generate support from opponents, and how to maintain strong relationships with those harmed by difficult decisions, among other topics. It's an enlightening and personal discussion, and I am very pleased to bring you Senator Tawana Nobles. Hey, Tawana, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Thank you. I appreciate you. How have you been?
I've been good, but the sunshine in California makes me so much better.
Yeah, it's nice out here. You come during a good week. Normally, it is a lot. It has been a lot hotter, so you came on like a day where it's not even breaking 80, so it's nice. Yeah. So I want to respect your time. Let's jump right into our conversation. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Tawana Nobles. My name is important. I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. Not a lot of people know that, to two parents who served in the Army. And I now reside in Washington State, where I'm a nonprofit leader. My career recently has been leading local not-for-profit organizations, and I'm a state senator and school board member in Washington State. And I'm a mom, a mommy, a mamacita.
Your mamacita. One of those nonprofit endeavors is the Black Future Co-op Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I co-founded the Black Future Co-op Fund with 3 other Black women, and it was our response in 2020 to the murder of George Floyd and a demand that we see an end to philanthropic redlining. We wanted to make sure that we could see a more equitable distribution of philanthropic dollars to the Black community. Still currently, fewer than 3% of philanthropic dollars are making their way to Black-led organizations. And so Black Future Co-op Fund was our way of raising money and granting money to Black-led organizations all across Washington State.
What did you learn about building institutions that center on community power through that experience?
One of the greatest things that I learned about building community power is you have to do it early whenever you are creating something. As a founder, it was really important that we gain community voice. I think, though, we could have started that feedback loop a little sooner in our process with Black Future Co-op Fund. I mean, there were 4 of us super eager leaders who wanted to do something for a community, but you really have to make sure that you incorporate community's voice early on in a process of like just designing. And if we want to change the philanthropic process, what does that look like? Eventually, we started to get better at that, but I think the greatest thing I learned is like, do that soon and early.
What kind of challenges did you encounter by not doing that soon?
Well, one of the challenges was I think we contributed a little bit to the lack of trust that already exists in the Black community. Because when we say we're changing the philanthropic paradigm, this is trust-based philanthropy. Well, if community were involved early in the process, community would have been more clear on what does that mean. But I think people still had a lot of questions on like, when is the grant window? So how can I apply? What do you mean trust-based? What does reporting look like? So folks had really good questions because leaders of nonprofit organizations are so used to being tied down by paperwork that they really wanted to make sure that when we said, no, we're trying to make this easy, that we really meant that. So I think by not being clear and including community in the beginning, community was a little skeptical. It was like, here's another organization saying they're going to give money to Black folks and make it easier. But we did deliver. We still have lots of room to grow at Black Future Co-op Fund, but we definitely delivered on selecting organizations, granting funds for multiple years, and not requiring paperwork, not requiring anyone to send us photos, but just not requiring the, like, we need to watch over your work. It's like, we already see you doing the work. Our grants are literally called the We See You grants. So we selected grantees who we knew were doing the work, and we tried to select as many. The organization continues to try to select as many Black-led organizations across Washington State as possible.
It's a very unique model, the We See You grants. And how did you win over skeptics when it comes to like the type of grant that you're providing, where it's like, yeah, we don't need all of this evidence to actually show the efficacy of your operations? How did you win over those skeptics?
Yeah, definitely by continuing to show that with our process of being barrier-free, it did not impede the great work that these organizations were doing, and we focused more on narrative and storytelling. So again, no grantee was required to submit pictures or participate in any videos that we wanted to share with community and our funders. But believe it or not, so many grantees want to. They're like, no, please amplify our message, amplify our work. They would send us pictures of events or milestones, or be so willing to participate in any themed videos, whether it was around Juneteenth or our anniversary, or just continuing to challenge the current philanthropic model. We have so many amazing stories about the work that's happening across Washington State, work that's being led by Black community members or that is supporting Black community members. And so moving towards the narrative sharing, I think really had a lot of folks see like, oh, wow, you don't have to write a 2-page report. We can see the work being done. And I think that really lowered some of the skepticism.
Where did you come up with that idea for trust? Trust is so important as a leader, to trust the people, not only that are doing the work, particularly if you're leading that work, but as an emotion. Where did that level of trust and that desire to trust others come from, and how does that manifest in your leadership at the national level today?
Mm-hmm. I share all the time in my story how important community is, and because of some of the barriers that I experienced as a child, experiencing foster care as a child, experiencing homelessness, having a family member that struggled with a substance use disorder, I really had to trust people around me who said, we got you, we want to take care of you. I had to trust people who said, we want to be the family that can care for you. We are going to be your foster parents. Or when we lived in shelters and there were folks who were like, we want to help to provide stable housing. So at a very early age, I needed to rely on and lean on community and trust community and people who are bringing resources and support to my life and to my family's life. And then to be honest, I'm a woman of faith, and so I really at an early age established a trust in God. But I knew that I could not do these things, provide for myself on my own. I needed to trust other people. And lots of my circumstances made it hard for me to be able to trust. But there were so many people and organizations that came through. And so I think as a leader, I understand that one important thing is I have to be a person of my word. If I tell someone I'm going to be there, I got to be there. If I tell someone this grant is barrier free, it has to be. If I tell someone, this will be the process, or this is how our organization will show up to support community, I just want to make sure that I'm a person of my word and a follow through is there.
Yeah, that's critically important. I think you only have your word. I think that's such an important feature, and it's so refreshing to hear that from a politician. So thank you. But it's really amazing. It's one of those rare things. We were talking about this yesterday about it's rare to hear somebody, particularly in politics, stay true to their principles. That's very rare. Yeah. How has that helped you throughout your career?
Well, it's important. And I tell people how I'm able to stick to my principles is by being clear about my boundaries and trusting that when I set those boundaries, it's the right thing to do, and being consistent. So yes, I am very fortunate to be able to serve as a state senator, to serve as a school board member. I'm also a woman who is still becoming. I'm also a mother. I also have a career, and there can be a lot of demand from all of those things. So boundaries are really, really important. And I remind myself that any aspect of my career does not define who I am, like the totality of who I am. So yes, I am a politician, an elected official, a state senator, but that is not my entire identity. So when people say like, oh, I'm surprised to see you at this event because you're a senator, I'm like, I'm a regular person who likes to enjoy their community. It's a job, just like I lead American Leadership Forum. It's a job, just like I'm a mother. But as a mother, I still have my own identity and things that I love to do that don't center my family or my children. So I know who I am, and there are things that I love and appreciate, and I have hobbies. And I don't let my job just dictate, what I can and cannot do all the time.
I was thinking about that last night when we were out at dinner, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I'm hanging out with like a state senator, like who's also a friend. We just like went and hung out, and it was just like a normal thing. You know what I mean? So it's true. You're right. You can't let your job define you. It's one of the things that I try to coach people through as well, is you can't let it's sort of tangentially related, but you can't let your ideas become your identity. Yes. You can't let your job or your role become your identity, because it actually makes you worse at doing your job. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely align with that.
And I would add, like, so the thing about politics and some other careers you can have is it's a job, but it also comes with power and influence. And I think you have to be so humble when you have the privilege and the blessing of being given power. People listen to you. People look to you. And I know that people are looking to me and watching me. And I don't want to model, I'm a powerful politician. I want to model, I'm a humble woman who cares about my community, who cares about my family. I also want to model, I'm a woman who cares about like myself. And so I do things that I find enjoyable for myself so that I don't get lost in the sauce. The work of being an elected official is super important, but because I've been elected to this job doesn't make me a more important person. And I think people can lose sight of like, I'm so important now. It's like, no, the work that you are doing is so important. Don't lose sight of that. Stay humble.
Why do you think people do lose sight of that? Because it's very common to lose sight of that. It seems like as we watch the news nowadays, it seems nobody is really a civil servant anymore. People don't do it for like the civics. They do it for their own benefit.
Oh, baby, it's so easy because the right soundbite can make you go viral, right? Can get you the right article. The right soundbite can move you up in your political party. I mean, there are so many incentives. And I say all the time, the amount of gratitude that we are shown just for being elected officials, people give us awards for just doing what we're supposed to do. We want to give you an award. We want to recognize you. People all the time are like, Senator, thank you so much for your time. And I'm like, you all, I am doing my job. But I can see how it can go to someone's head of like, that's right, thank me for being here. Thank me, I'm somebody. Give me that award, I'm somebody. But for me personally, and I say this humbly, but I also recognize the ways that I have been blessed. I was a state championship athlete in high school. I have had amazing opportunities throughout my life. I have had the privilege of being awarded for many things throughout my career. I work really hard to be successful. So being elected in the state Senate was not, and receiving an award, I'm not like, oh, this is my first time being recognized. It's not. I'm used to things. And I'm also used to the responsibility. I'm used to knowing you are here and you've been given this responsibility. Do a good job. Don't let it go to your head. Again, you haven't become a more important person. You just have to be focused on more important work. But I can tell you now, with just the amount of attention and can you please come? We're so thankful. Oh my gosh, you're a senator. Like I can just stand, it's like if I comment on someone's post, they're like, the senator commented on and I'm like, I'm just a regular knucklehead person just commenting.
That's how I feel. If I see a like on one of my LinkedIn posts, I'm like, oh, a senator. I definitely agree with you though. I think like while I am a big believer in giving praise to people, you don't applaud a fish for swimming. That's what they do. So, you know what I mean? Like, you don't get an award for showing up at your job every day. So I definitely believe in that. I think, to your other point, tell me how you feel about this. This is my personal opinion.
Okay.
I do not believe in participation awards personally. And I think your experience in athletics and your experience through your life, tell me how it could have influenced your mindset about not desiring or the importance of getting rewarded or awarded for every little thing. Mm-hmm. Did that have any influence on you?
I think so, because service is so deeply rooted into the core of my being. I tell people all the time, I hope piss is not a bad word on your podcast.
No, you can say whatever you want.
But I tell people all the time, when I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, I still served my community. When I was a young person living in shelters, I volunteered in the front office. I volunteered in the clothing bank because I can get first dibs on all the clothes. I volunteered in the kitchen. I would help to make sure the adults were doing their chores and meeting curfew as a kid in like middle and high school. Mm. And I really loved serving my community. So me being in the legislature is not about power, it's about service. My experiences of taking care of my brothers when our parent was, on a binge for drugs really taught me to care for others, to look out for other people. So it is not a, claim to fame for me. Even when people are like, will you do this forever? What's next? I'm like, serving my community is such a natural thing. It's just in a different form. Mm. But I don't feel like this is my big moment. And when people are like, oh my gosh, a state senator, like, how do you, I'm like, you know what I really, really love? Pilates. Can we talk about that? Like, can we talk about my hobbies? Just like I don't want to talk about my day job all the time. No. But I think it's my responsibility to provide that pushback and remind people it's not about the title. It's about me loving to serve my community. But we live in a country, and to be honest, there are lots of countries like this, but we live in a country that values merit, that values titles and positionality. And so I really just tell myself, you are a normal person with a normal job, and don't lose sight of the fact that the reason why you are here is to serve, And that can be a short time. It does not need to be a long time, but don't lose sight of you're here to care about the people. Because again, with even just like lobbyists want to take you out, people want to give you praise, people want to be your best friend. Mm. And I just maintain those boundaries of, I want all the positive relationships, but I want to be very careful not to get sucked in to a space or mindset or environment where I lose sight of, I'm not here for the wrong people. Like, I'm here for Washingtonians that I represent in my district.
Mm. And how do you maintain those professional boundaries? Like, that's going to be a difficult thing to do, especially as you become, like, friendly or familiar with people. I believe that, friend relationships, people say, like, don't hire your friends, right? Mm-hmm. I think friends outside of work can actually enhance the working relationship, mm-hmm. but it is important to keep those boundaries very clear, because if something happens at work, you're like, this is not personal, this is just professional.
Yeah. How
do you maintain those boundaries?
I agree with some of what you were saying. How I maintain it is simply by saying no. So I have some rules for myself. In the legislature in Washington State, many of the members are senators and representatives. Many members move to our state capitol during session. I live about 35 minutes away, so I go home every single night. So like one boundary I have is I don't stay the night in the state capitol. I want to be home with my family. I want to be there when my kids get up for school every single morning.
You're not sleeping at the office.
I'm not. Well, a lot of people, there's a whole rental community too. A lot of people, like for 20 years, they have their rental that they go to, or 15 years, but there is a legislative rental community. Because I live 35 minutes away, I have colleagues. It takes 5-6 hours for them to get home, like if they drive, or they have to fly to get home. So it's a huge privilege because not every member can do that. But when we are in session, we need to report to work every single day. So some folks need to move there so that they can do that consistently. And for me, I go home. I also don't do evening dinners. It's very common every day. I sometimes say the legislature can be very like frat party-ish, like college days. Everybody moves into the dorms. There's something happening every night. And I don't do evening dinners, and especially not one-on-one dinners with lobbyists. I have not, most of the lobbyists I work with are amazing people, so it's nothing against them. But I don't want to have dinner with men in the evening as a part of my work. And during session, I'm going to go home. I don't want to, like, I do like to socialize and I do like to have a drink with my friends, but also I like to try to maintain a professional boundary where I don't want to go to a place where now we're drinking and, being too comfortable because of how seriously I take my legislative work. And I just want to go home and reset. I also don't want this continuity of like I'm working all day and then I'm still in legislative mode in the evening. I want to do a really good job, and most days we're working 12, 13-hour days. And then I want to go home and reset and wake up, do my morning workout routine and stick to like my own routines and then go to work. But I say no. And there is a consequence because people are like, gosh, Senator Nobles is like so hard to read, and Senator Nobles is so hard to get to, not get into like regular meetings during the day, but when people say, I'd like to have an off-campus meeting, which means off-campus at a restaurant where you have more liberty to talk about things that you can't talk about or do on campus. I'm just like, no, I'm happy to have a regular meeting with you on campus. During the interim, I'm a little more flexible with lunches, but I still don't do all the normal evening things. And I don't want to feel like I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm being wined and dined and then I start feeling influenced.
Right.
So
Or
I
beholden.
think or beholden. So I just watch that line. I'm like, anything we can talk about it in my office for 15 minutes. Like, I get it. I know that's how politics is typically played. And again, I'm happy to have a meeting, but it needs to be at a reasonable time and place.
Yeah, I have similar experiences, not at that level, of course, but in my field where we have vendors that come and say, hey, I've got, front row tickets to this event, or I have, we're going to a nice dinner, or come to this thing and you get a free pair of, I don't know, sunglasses or whatever, like nice Gucci shades or something like that. They're never Gucci shades, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know people in my career who go do those things. Oh, I got this thing I'm going to go to. And I must admit, I am guilty if there's like a nice restaurant and it's a group of people. I'm like, all right, I'll go to that and like listen to a pitch. But often, in fact, most of the time, I turn those sorts of things down for exactly the same reason. I value my time outside of the office. When I am done with the end of the day, I try to like separate myself from the world of work. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way when you have to go to a thing, especially living in Los Angeles, and I have to go somewhere to do something. Yeah. It just extends your day. And I like the opportunity for my own mental health to reset. So I feel that. Does that make it difficult for you to build or maintain relationships in the legislature?
Such a good question. If I'm being honest, I think I would say yes, because there are lots of people who are still old school. This is the way we do it, right? This is a good old boys game. You come, I wine and dine you, I tell you all my things. You feel this pressure of like, oh, they gave me such a good dinner or a good trip, and so I really want to heavily consider them. So I would have to say yes, but I don't think in a tremendous way by any means. If anything, people respect who I have consistently been for almost 5 years in the legislature. They know what my standard is because every member is different. And, there are still some of us who are earlier in our careers. We have day jobs, we have families. I don't have a spouse at home. So for lots of reasons, I have to have the boundaries that work for me. And I think it is, I'm not a male who has a spouse at home taking care of kids. I can come home and dinner is ready. Someone else has done the grocery shopping. Or, someone else is bringing in a second salary. Like, no, I have a full-time day job where I have to bring in my salary. I also have to create time and boundaries and like space for that. And just for my home responsibilities and to reset. So I'm okay with people, especially starting off like not knowing, like, whoa, this is different. She told me no, she's not coming, and just a chit chat of people are like, can you ask Senator Nobles, can you figure out how do we get inside? And I think people are settling into, she's effective. She will meet with you in her office. She's not opposed to meetings, but just some of these evening reception, yada, yada, some of the trips. If it's educational, some things I'll do during the interim, but I think it's earning me more respect than impacting relationships, to be honest.
How in the world do you prioritize? You have family, you've got job, you've got like legislative job, you have hobbies, Pilates. How are you prioritizing those things? End of question.
And my answer about prioritization is that I have been practicing this for a long time. So I've shared a bit about my childhood and upbringing. I have had a lot of responsibility on my plate for a long time, and being able to compartmentalize and also prioritize. There was no food at home last night. I had to make top ramen and hot dogs for my brothers. I'm only a middle schooler. I want to go to school and do well in school and continue to make straight A's and B's. I have to come home and not trigger my parents so they don't like punch me in the face. Like I think being able to know like you are here, you're doing this thing, you're transitioning to this is important, this is how you show up. I've had to practice, sadly, as a result of a lot of trauma. And so I'm not used to having to think about managing a lot of different things. The beautiful thing about my life now is I get to manage things that bring me joy and help me to feel like I'm contributing positive to my community. And also I have a lot more control over those things. But I think even as a kid, just waking up and it's like, oh, you have to go to a shelter today. Oh, you've been evicted. Oh, you're living with someone else. Like, again, just pivoting, changing, those things are not new. I just have built in my practice, like, okay, instead of it being a trauma response, you've built up this ability to manage multiple things, to exist in multiple spaces and be a professional, polished state senator, and then a limber Pilates enthusiast. Like, I can go in and out of those spaces, and I can do it with joy and healing. But I just feel like I have practiced for a long time being able to exist in multiple places at the same time. And for whatever reason, I have always still prioritized myself. Like, even as a young mom, I didn't have to go through this phase of like, I'm losing myself. I'm not doing like, I used to do yoga more than Pilates back in the day, but I still did yoga even as a stay-at-home mom. I was really interested in politics. I still worked on political campaigns or volunteered. Have the cutest pictures of like volunteering with my kids when they were babies. And so I have been practicing like happy mom is happy family. Happy mom is going to be a happy career woman, or, happy Tawana is going to be able to be a happier person and all of these things. But I do think it has been a practice. It's not new to me to have a bunch of shit on my plate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, adversity is a terrible thing to waste, and you have certainly not wasted your adversity. What advice? Oh, so let me ask you this. Do you feel like adversity, which is character building, do you feel it's necessary? Perhaps not the level of adversity you've been through, but do you feel like adversity is necessary to be successful in your role, both as an executive in sort of private or nonprofit enterprise and also in politics?
I think so. Adversity is just challenges that have been presented. And you're right. I don't wish many of the things that I've experienced on anyone. Even with my own children, though, I know that I have to let them experience some struggle and some challenge and figure out how they can get themselves out of that situation, even if that means on this one I need to ask mom, on this one I need to ask a friend, on this one I need to do a little research. On this issue, it's challenging. I might need to take a little time to think through it. I might need to calm down. Like, I need even my own children to understand the adversity that's presented to them. They have to figure out how to navigate through it, because that is what makes you a tremendous leader. We mentioned earlier, I'm currently the executive director for American Leadership Forum in Tacoma, Pierce County. We're one of 8 chapters across the country. And the types of leaders that we want in our program are leaders who have experienced and overcome adversity. We want leaders who have had to make tough decisions, who have strategies on how to overcome adversity, because I think leadership is hard. Leadership is lonely. And part of what we do at ALF is we build a network of leaders who can share those skills and resources with each other and for a lifetime. So absolutely, we have to be able to build that muscle that helps us to figure out the right tool or strategy when we're faced with really difficult challenges.
ALF is interesting because the types of leaders that it develops, and really I think that it attracts, are leaders who align with a lot of ideas that are under threat today. What about that organization resonates with you, and how important do you think it is? For example, DEI is the big like threatening word, and it's been under threat in different ways for a very long time. Why do you think that's still important? Why do you think it's important that leaders have a sense for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging?
Yeah. ALF is critically important right now because one of our core principles is bridge building. ALF is not a partisan organization, so senior fellows, represent with different parties. They are, have cross-sector careers, but the bridge building and communicating with individuals who might have beliefs or mindsets or careers that you would not normally intersect with is such a gift. I graduated class 26 from ALF in Tacoma Pierce County, and I shared with you at dinner last night, one of my favorite sessions was the nonviolent communication session. And when I'm on the Senate floor and I'm in the middle of debate, and in Washington State, we have very healthy debate. We practice decorum, so we are not using bad built beach blonde. Like
Sure.
we
will
get
reflective of the
down.
broader environment.
Mr. President will gavel us down.
Yeah.
But we debate, and one at a time, we say how we feel and respectfully and without impugning. And I thank ALF for giving me, because anyone who knows me knows that easily I can be characterized as like fire engine red. I mean, my line name, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My line name is Spitfire. Like so it's like I can stay ready, but again, you're in a different forum. There are different behaviors and practices, and I love that ALF has taught me that even when you feel like your beliefs are under attack or they're just a differing opinion, doesn't even have to be an attack, you can communicate in a way that is respectful and productive and in a way that can call people in. And I know right now we want to be, many of us are very firm in our beliefs. It doesn't mean that we still can't talk to each other or be in the same room and remind ourselves, especially in my community, in the Tacoma Pierce County area, we have to make this community better together. We can't just say politically we're going to be divided on every single thing. What I love about our legislature that we consistently highlight is over 90% of our legislation is bipartisan. And there are far fewer issues, there are big issues, where we're just not going to see eye to eye. How we communicate, how we manage those relationships is still very important. So I'm grateful to my experience in ALF for preparing me to be a leader that can meet this moment, that can show up now and be courageous, be firm in my values, but also be willing to call people in.
This is a theme that recurs in people that I've spoken to, which is the focus on what is right, not who is right. And it's a very important theme. Yeah.
Good point.
People would do well to remember that. We have a lot better leaders if people remember that.
Yes.
Speaking of creating like bridge building, what is your playbook for getting bipartisan buy-in on something that might not be palatable to, your political, the other people, the other side of the aisle?
Kind of back to what I said with Black Future Co-op Fund, where you want to have that feedback loop early on. You want to have that community input. I think it's the same when you think about politics. If I have a piece of legislation and, I want to make sure that it has bipartisan support, I live in Western Washington and I have colleagues who serve, I serve on a transportation committee. I have colleagues who represent Eastern Washington, more rural, more Republican. And while we have lots of similar issues, we care about safety. We care about walkable communities. We want young people and adults to be able to move across town. We care about accessibility. What that looks like in our communities might be different. So when I'm working on issues or legislation, I definitely, want to work closely with colleagues and see what is important to them. How does this show up in your community? And I think I love when I have a Republican colleague that's the number 2 on a bill. So usually a bill has a number 1 and a number 2, the prime sponsor and a secondary sponsor. And I love finding legislation where I have bipartisan sponsorship on bills, because it communicates this issue is important to us, Eastern Washington, Western Washington, Democrats or Republicans. this is about people, and this is going to help make the lives of people in Washington State better. But I have to first lead with like, what do you care about? How does this issue impact you in your community? And that can be anything from diapers to safe roadways to education, more physical activity for kids. I do a lot of, I work on a lot of legislation that impacts youth and young people in K-12, and I'm the chair of the Senate Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee. Higher education, workforce, we care about the economy. That's not a partisan issue. So just keeping in mind what's important to my colleagues and how can we work together to better meet the needs of Washingtonians, I think is the best approach.
When you encounter friction there, because if you look at Washington, D.C., you see, for example, the economy is a partisan issue. How do you bridge those gaps when you encounter those types of roadblocks or that type of feedback from, again, your the political friction?
Yeah. Well, I cry first, acknowledging that that's what's happening in
Violent
so many other states. Right? And then I smile and remember, like, I live in Washington State, where we manage our, I would say, I think we manage our political relationships a lot differently. The other thing that I'm so grateful I realized when I became elected to the Senate is there is not a Democrat, and there's not just like a Republican. It's a spectrum of Democrats.
Right.
We don't all agree. Right. All of us Democrats don't agree equally about the economy or managing our state budget, or how we should invest and value higher education. And that's the one thing I learned too about my colleagues in Washington State. They're not just a Republican. There's a spectrum, and they all have a variety of beliefs. And so I think if there are a handful of my Republican colleagues who are not on the same page, it still leaves some openness for many other colleagues who might be on the same page. So I definitely don't lose hope because, like, oh my gosh, this is a partisan issue. I also keep in mind there might be one or two people who don't feel that way. I also have to be honest, we have a Democratic majority. So even if none of my Republican colleagues agreed, we could pass almost any legislation. However, we would like to bring along as many people as possible, right?
Yeah. Good leadership. Yeah.
Right. We want to try to be inclusive. So I think I just feel grateful that that's not, we live in a better Washington, so that's not how we do politics in the better Washington, even though sometimes it can be really challenging.
One often forgotten leg of a leadership triangle. You have like leaders, followers, and then you have the environment. And people often forget about the environment in which people are operating. How impactful is the environment that you're operating in? How influential is that in your leadership? What I mean by that is, we're on the West Coast, right? You have like sort of like that West Coast line of blue all the way up. People are generally more progressive on the coasts. Do you feel like that ethos has any influence in not only your politics, but the politics, for example, of Republicans, as opposed to, for example, you go to sort of the middle of the country where it's deeply red, and that surrounding influences, like, I mean, you see it most recently in Oklahoma, for example, where they're talking about all kinds of crazy educational things. And I think the environment there lends support to that type of movement. How do you feel your environment, the more blue environment, the progressive environment of the West, influences your environment that you're operating in?
Yeah, I definitely think my environment impacts who I am as a leader quite a bit, because we're human. I'm human. And I do think I live in a place where I have to remind myself, we have the votes. Yes, you feel very emotional about this. You care deeply about this issue, this topic. You want to get on the floor and debate all night about how important it is, but you have the votes and this is going to pass. So like take care of your own mental health. It's okay. And so I don't live in an environment where we need to debate on the floor over and over because we want to get this message out to our constituents that we feel this way or don't feel this way. I live in an environment where our attorney general is a Democrat, our governor is a Democrat. We have Democratic majority in the House and in the Senate. We have the support of Oregon, the support of California. Like, we have neighbors who, as you mentioned, are on the same page. But also not just the environment of the state and it being more democratic. When I think about the environment of the chamber in which I work, everything about how leadership creates a culture. Because if our rules for decorum allow for debate, name calling, it would change the environment. So we have leadership understanding, leadership being modeled that says, no, we want to make sure that we balance it out. Even with speeches, like a Republican spoken debate, let a Democrat, we want to try to find Republican colleagues to sign on to our bills. We want to try to pass as many Republican bills as reasonable without compromising Democratic bills. All of that is creating an environment that is not hostile, that doesn't feel violent. Because when you just close someone out because you have power, the Democrats have power, we could close you out. We don't have to let you do anything. It creates unnecessary hostility. It's going to make people then have to try to show their own constituents that they're fighting for them because where is the evidence? We don't let them pass bills. We are not letting them speak. But even on my committee as a chair, I really solicit the input from committee members, including my Republican colleagues on, what do we want to consider for tours, or how do you feel about this legislation? But wherever we can find those wins, I think it helps the environment when we're able to work together and reduce the hostility, reduce the friction so that we can stay focused on serving the people in Washington.
Speaking of serving the people in Washington, or of Washington, not every bill is like a wholesale win. There's generally, potentially, let's say there is a downside for people, right, in a bill. How do you balance the benefit and the potential, let's say, for lack of a better word, harm? Hopefully it's not harm, but the potential lack of benefit when you're evaluating a bill, for example, or when you're writing a bill.
Yeah, it's tough, but again, this is a part of leadership. And a huge example I'll give you is our budget bill, because states pass budgets, but the budget is typically passed as a bill, and then the governor reviews and signs it. But our budget bill, we experienced a budget deficit this year, and while we fund lots of amazing things in our state's budget, we also had to make major cuts. So that bill included lots of cuts for organizations that were supporting youth experiencing foster care, organizations that were helping survivors of domestic violence, educational programs. It also made investments in special education. It also made investments in what we call MSOC, material supplies and operating costs for schools. So it's just tough because it's like, we have to fund these things and no longer fund these things until we can see more revenue. And no one wants to do that. And I take personal responsibility, even though I don't serve on a budget team. I don't go in a budget room and make those decisions. I advocated that many of those things weren't cut. I'm not the sole decision maker, but it's one of those things where you have to be a part of the team. And I guess I wonder, I'd have to look back to see if there were people who did vote no on the budget. But at the end of the day, we all want to vote to pass the budget because we have to send a message of, as tough as this is, and with some of our decision making, we have to do what's best for Washington State, and we had to find some savings and some cuts. We can't spend more money than we have. But that is one difficult thing, but it also was bipartisan. The Republicans also had to vote for this budget that made some investments and also cut some serious investments. And we all got to give our speeches on, we have to pass this budget. We have to, our responsibility is to balance the budget, and we'll work really hard to try to find revenue so that we can make investments in the future. But it's just tough. It's very, tough. It brought some of my colleagues to tears when organizations are like, we have to close our doors now because we were heavily relying on the state's funding. So it's not easy. And this was my first year experiencing a budget deficit. And next year, we're going to have to make additional cuts. So yeah, I would say that does cause harm to community. That does, eliminate important resources in our community. But the reality is federal, state, and local governments, we sometimes it's kind of cyclical. We are sometimes going to have to make some cuts. The money is not guaranteed forever.
Yeah, and it's one of those difficult things. Like, as a leader, you have to make decisions that not everybody's going to be happy with, and you have to live with those decisions and support those decisions. How do you maintain positive relationships with some of those people?
Yeah, what I'm doing currently is I'm back in community helping those organizations. So federal government made some cuts to some of our food banks. Our state government made some investments in local food banks and to rid food insecurity. And, this interim was able to go to one of our local food banks and just kind of see some of the changes and also really talk up in community. Like I met with a private donor who was like, I really want to invest in, locally in Tacoma Pierce County. And I'm like, oh my gosh, give to a food bank. Like the funding is not there. I had a great meeting with Bomber Group, more of our philanthropic community, and talked about, they asked me if I could see the impacts of, the cuts that we made. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm on this Wednesday meeting with a lot of organizations who have had to make significant reductions because of those cuts. And I wonder if there's a way that the philanthropic community can help to fill some of those gaps. But I'm still like meeting with those organizations, listening to those organizations. I had some really great meetings like with ECAP, and they talked about the state made cuts to important ECAP slots. And like I told them, it's important that they continue to amplify the message. Like obviously, I would not want to be because I'm not a budget writer, and I would not want to be responsible for like striking through ECAP programs. So I know, and I'm not here to throw my colleagues under the bus. We're a team.
What's an ECAP program?
It's like early childhood education for low-income families. Okay. Yeah, like Head Start, early, super early childhood. But it is no cost, and it's for low-income people who like receive SNAP benefits or public resources from the government if their income is lower. And so that's really tough. But one thing I've been doing is still listening. Like I tell everyone, even if your program was cut, continue to advocate so that when there is an infusion of funds, there is more revenue, the importance of your program has not been taken off the radar. So keep it on our radars. But I just continue to meet with those organizations to advocate that funding come from somewhere else. I'm going to return to session in 2026, continuing to advocate for those funds. Same for higher education. I'm actually going to sponsor a piece of legislation asking for the return of some funds that impacted some of our higher education institutions. So I'm just going to keep doing what I can. And it's a balance, right? Because again, I'm not the enemy of my colleagues who work on the budget. We are a team, and I understand the goal just like they do. So I may say, please put this back in, and they may be like, thank you, that was nice, and no. And I don't go to Twitter and start being like, I hate that. No.
Oh, who was that referring to?
That was hypothetical. I've never seen that before. Right, I don't see people going and like airing out their colleagues. Never seen that.
Thank you for your attention to this matter. No, absolutely not. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. On that note, I think your leadership is this style of leadership that we need more of, not only outside of politics, but obviously inside of politics. Principled, moral leadership, standing on your business, making sure that, your constituents are well served. You're just an example for the rest of the country. So thank you for the time. Thank you for your service. In our final moments, is there anything you want to highlight, anything you want to bring attention to for listeners?
Yeah, I would like to share kind of my favorite saying, the best is yet to come. I know that folks feel very sad, depressed, hopeless, and not everyone, but there are lots of people who just feel like it's so heavy. The economy is bad. It's so heavy. Stick like stick with it, stay in there. The best is yet to come. Again, even what we're experiencing politically on a national level and in some of our states, very cyclic. And for anyone that feels like you're on the bottom or we're on the bottom, you, we, us, we're going to be back on top. The best is yet to come.
That's so funny. That's my mom's favorite saying.
I'm pretty much your mom.
Yeah. That's basically.
I'm mother.
You guys, you resemble each other so much. Yeah, it's so funny. She's been signing off her emails with "the best is yet to come" for years. I feel like it was probably part of her slogan, one of her businesses. But yeah, it's a great. I definitely agree. I appreciate your time, Tawana. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.